and queer activists is occupying a rental property in Camps Bay in the upmarket Cape Peninsula. Their actions are aimed at highlighting the issue of safety, land and housing. The group that calls itself #WeSeeYou says it is an artistic protest that uses occupation to drive home their message.
Camps Bay, one of the most expensive and exclusive areas in Cape Town. Popular among the rich and famous, most properties have scenic views and many are used only as holiday homes. The #WeSeeYou activists booked and paid for 3 days accommodation through a well-known global online rental organization. They entered the property last week Friday and when the 3 days were up, started the occupation. The all-women and queer activists say they are not contesting the ability for people to live in beautiful spaces, but they believe everyone should be able to. Saying COVID-19 has exacerbated an already dire situation that millions of South Africans face, it has also left people homeless and forced to use housing that is not safe.
The question is often why this site, why this place? If we look at the nature of occupation at the moment, people are living on empty tracts of land and still being painted as opportunists, still being villainized when there's been no response by the state, the city or the private sector to actually provide adequate housing. And so what we're asserting by this act of live-in and performance is that these spaces, particularly spaces that have remained unoccupied throughout this time, particularly during COVID and the pause in the tourism industry, but for large parts of the year, can and should be used for public good, particularly when it does not impact anyone's ability to live in the space and when the space does represent a kind of intersection behind properties used solely for profit that are often amongst a number of assets and properties used for profit when there are people like many of us who are homeless, houseless, vulnerable and unsafe.
The group of 7 people say they have purposefully come to a space that is earmarked for access and for profit of those with immense privilege. This, the group says, as housing provided by government is undignified and unsafe. It says spaces such as the house they occupy should become part of the dialogue.
So we know that spaces like Camps Bay, Sea Point, Clifton, Constantia all have a long legacy of colonial displacement and apartheid displacement. And in 2020, not much has changed. You know, certain areas are still demarcated for rich, certain areas are still demarcated and deemed inaccessible for people like us. People of color, people that are queer, people that are vulnerable. We are told that we are supposed to exist only in certain areas, you know, along the Cape Flats or in other areas on the outskirts. So we have the likes of Blikkiesdorp, for example, as a demarcated area for social housing. And we say that we do not consent to that. That's not okay.
In a press release by the company that manages the property, the group was given until 5 p.m. on Heritage Day to vacate the premises to accommodate other reservations. It says it's not an internationally owned business, but a medium-sized local tourism and property management company that employs 14 South Africans that are predominantly female-led. It says it's being held ransom for a cause that does not involve the company and cites the major losses it suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic. The company says the occupiers are compromising the livelihood of its staff.
Our fight has never been with a property management company. We've wanted to speak to the owner directly. And we stand in solidarity with those who are employees, because some of us are employees too, or have been employees. Other of us have also been affected by COVID, and our livelihoods have been impacted, hence this action. But I do think that we also calling for a level of, is this the only truth, you know, that only certain people's livelihoods and certain industries, you know, have been impacted?
The activists say one of the outcomes they hope for is that properties such as this could become available as safe spaces for the vulnerable. The group says the occupation is indefinite. Mariska Botha, SABC News, Cape Town.